Today is Sunday, October 6, 2024. We are interviewing Regina Francis in Charlotte, North Carolina, in the United States. One quick thing, whether it was in Greece or then later in America, you mentioned your sister Josephine had been dating a Jewish boy. How important was it to your parents that you married within the religion?
Well, it was, I think, the number one motivator to leave Greece was so that we would be in a larger Jewish community, and it would be we would be able to marry Jewish. It didn't matter if it was Ashkenazi, Sephardi, and as long as they were Jewish. And of course, the other motivator was economy, and a third motivator was, so in Greece, the custom is that if you have a daughter, you pay a dowry to the groom. So I remember my father saying, I have 3 daughters. God bless them. I have 3 daughters. I can manage the dowry for one. What am I going to do for the other 2? So that was a big motivator. In the United States, no dowry. We don't mention any dowries in the United States. But it was very important that we marry within the faith, yes.
Today is Sunday, October 6, 2024. We are interviewing Regina Francis in Charlotte, North Carolina, in the United States. And my name is Sherry Aviv. Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
Why don't you start off telling us your current name and then spelling it for us?
Sure. My name is Regina Francis, Regina Frances.
Great.
And I live in Charlotte, North Carolina.
And when were you born?
I was born July 27th, 1942.
And where were you born?
I was born in Pátras, Greece.
Can you spell Pátras for us?
Sure. P as in Peter, A, T as in Tom, R as in Richard, A, S as in Sam.
And did you have any nicknames? Did your parents or grandparents call you anything special?
Well, in Greece I was called Rena as a nickname, but kind of got dropped off when I came to the United States. But there are still, my cousins from Greece call me Rena.
And so how old are you today?
Oh, my goodness, I'm 82.
That's great. So you say you're from Greece. What was your first language then?
Greek.
And do you still speak it today?
Yes, I do, and I can read and I can write, and because I was 14 when I came to this country.
And how about your children? Did you teach them Greek?
Not so much.
And recently, didn't you start teaching Greek at a preschool?
Yes, I have been substituting at a charter school here in North Carolina, in Charlotte, that teaches Greek as part of their curriculum. And I have been substituting for Greek teachers who have to take the day off or have to, in this particular instance, in the beginning of the school year, I subbed for a teacher who had to stay in Greece longer than anticipated because of illness of a member of her family. So I taught kindergarten students that first entered the school not speaking Greek at all, but they have Greek every day for 2 45-minute periods. So they learned how to count in Greek, they learned how to do the greetings and how to say their name. So it was very rewarding.
So let's go back then in time a little bit, because your childhood in Greece. Let's talk a little bit about Pátras. What kind of town was it? Where was it in Greece? What was life like there?
Pátras is located in the northwest Peloponnesus, which is in the southern part of Greece. It is by the water, It's a beautiful city, and it was and is the third largest city in Greece. When I lived there, there was a population of 100,000. I think today is probably 200,000 or so. I don't know exactly.
So Greece has a long history of different type of Jewish population. Can you talk about what type of Jewish Greek person observance you were?
Sure. So Greece has had a Jewish presence since the destruction of the first temple. Jews migrated to Greece with the Roman Empire. My heritage is that. We're called Romagnot Jews. Then other Jewish populations came to Greece 1492 from Spain after the Inquisition, and they're Sephardic Jews. Ashkenazi Jews came south from Europe to escape pogroms or persecution there. So there was a presence of Ashkenazi Jews as well. So we're all Jewish, but we practiced a little differently. The Sephardic Jews spoke Ladino. The Romagnot Jews did not. Ladino is a Judo-Hispanic language written in Hebrew letters, but Spanish words. We spoke Greek, and I didn't even know at the time that we were Romagnot. I learned that after studying the United States, in Greece, we were like, they spoke Spanish, we didn't. So that was it. They sang the prayers, chanted prayers differently than we did. But we all read the same Torah, the Hebrew, and observed the holidays the same way.
So in Pátras, was that mainly Romagnot community as opposed to the Sephardic?
Yes. Pátras was mostly Romagnot. The bulk of the Sephardic Jews lived in central Greece and northern Greece, Salonika, the most famous city of the Sephardic Jews, and Salonika was the second largest city. My husband came from central Greece, and he was Sephardic.
And tell us about Jewish life that you know from in Pátras, how many synagogues they had before the war, after the war. Can you give us a sense of that?
So at the peak of the Jewish presence in Pátras, there were about 300 Jews. There was one synagogue. My grandfather was a very prominent member of the Jewish community. My uncles, my father as well, when he got older. And we went to services. Now, I don't know before the war because I was born right before the occupation of Greece. But after the war, I remember going to services in the synagogue, building a sukkah during Sukkot in the courtyard of the synagogue. Sephardic Jews, Romagnot Jews were pretty much Orthodox. The women's section was separate from the men's. And I remember sitting with my mother and my grandmother in the women's section while my father was in the men's section.
So in Pátras, was there a Jewish section, or just was everybody intermingled as they lived?
There wasn't a distinct Jewish section. We lived close to the synagogue. I mean, most places you could go to walking. You didn't need, nobody had a car, but we walked everywhere. So Other Jewish friends lived within walking distance from us, and we were all within walking distance of the synagogue.
So, how did your family, your father's side and or your mother's side, end up in Pátras? Were they always lived there? Did they move there?
So my father's family, my grandfather on my father's side, came from Corfu. My father was born in Corfu, which is an island in the Ionian Sea close to Italy. And Corfu was part of Italy at some point in history. My grandfather came to Pátras because it was a port city, and he had a business of money exchange. And when sailors would come into the port, they would go into his store to exchange the money, for Greek money. So that's how he ended up in Pátras. He moved his family to Pátras. My mother's family lived in Pátras. My grandmother on my mother's side was born in another island, Zakynthon, the Ionian Sea. But and I don't know how old she was when she came to Pátras. But my mother was born in Pátras and lived there until before she married my father. While they were engaged, the family moved to Athens because of the business that my uncle was in. My grandfather on my mother's side was a Jewish educator. He wasn't in business like the rest of the Jewish members of the family. His life was dedicated to teaching young Jewish boys Hebrew and the bar mitzvah lessons and all of that. My father was named Emmanuel Vallely.
So your father was Emmanuel Vallely, and he worked in the dry good business. And did the store experience, did it have patrons of both Greek and Jewish, or was it catered to a certain population?
No, it catered to everybody. Dressmakers would come to the store, buy fabric where they made dresses for clients. Individual women who hired dressmakers would buy their own fabric and then hire the dressmaker to make dresses. So it did not cater to, if he only depended on the Jewish population, it wouldn't have been enough to, it catered to everybody.
What happened that your parents started seeing changes? What happened that made your parents start to worry about their lives and everything?
So, in the beginning of the war, Greece was divided into three sections. The southern part of Greece where we lived was under Italian occupation. And our parents, my parents, did not feel threatened at all. The Italians were good to them. They, sure, it was war and there were rations and there were soldiers, but the soldiers were friendly. My parents spoke Italian. My grandparents spoke Italian. They conversed with these soldiers. They were friends. There was a guard that was in charge of our neighborhood, and he would smuggle extra rations from my mother because she had two young children. So things were not, my parents didn't feel threatened. But as the Italians withdrew in 1943, the Nazis took over all of Greece, and so that became a very dangerous time. My uncle, my mother's brother, who was in Athens and had access to news much more than we did, was in communication with my father about what was going on, and they used a code they sent telegrams to each other. So they used a code where the situation was the patient. How was the patient doing? So the patient, my uncle would say, the patient is stable, things are okay. And then things changed and the patient became very ill. It's time for you to go. The patient is very ill. And that's when my father understood that we were in danger.
So here you are in this community. Did you first time feel any not your parents, because you were young, anti-Semitism? Were you Greek? Were you Jewish? Were you Greek, Jewish? Did the neighbors rally? Can you share some of that?
So we were Greek. We were Jews in religion, but we were Greek. We were friends with our neighbors. Our neighbors respected us. We respected them. Sure, there's Greek expressions that are anti-Semitic in nature, but they're not hateful in the sense that, if a Greek uses an anti-Semitic expression and they find out you're a Jew, say, it's just an expression. I didn't mean it for you, But as a whole, we were respected. We were valued. And in turn, my family valued their friendship. And so when it was time for us to leave and go into hiding, my mother gave her belongings to neighbors, and, her silver, her crystal, her linen, things that they could take from the house. And she said to the neighbors, to her friends, here, you keep these things for me. If we come back, then you'll give them back to me. If we don't come back, you keep that. And thank God we came back, and the neighbors came and brought my mother's stuff back. And it was my mother always talked about how loyal friends they were.
So you mentioned earlier there was an Italian guard for the street. Do you know if they made, for lack of a better word, a little ghetto, or, how did that work for the Jewish people at that time? Were they
it was not
to a certain place?
It was not for the Jewish people. It was not the guard for the Jewish people. It was the guard for that section of town. So the town was divided into sections, and they had guards in every section. And there were Jews that lived in every part. But the part where we lived, the guard, because my parents communicated with him I'm guessing there was more than one guard, but the fact that they were able to converse, and you become more personally involved with somebody when you can talk to them. So yeah.
So at this point, the patient is very sick.
Yeah.
What happened that enabled your family to leave? And let's talk about what family was leaving. So can you talk about arrangements or any of that?
So my uncle Victor,
live in Athens.
No, that's my uncle Victor, my father's side, his brother, and Pátras. Now my uncle Marcos is in Athens, and he's the one that's giving us the what's happening. So, but Victor was a hiker and a skier. He would go to the mountains and ski, and he had met people in the mountains.
And Victor, again, is your father's older brother.
Correct. He was not married. So from the 5 siblings, and my father was the only one married, and his sister who had moved away. So there was, Victor had met people in the mountains and through his hiking club. And so he got in touch with them about, where can we go? and they told him about this little village called Michaleika.
Can you spell that?
Michaleika, Michaleika. That's the best, the closest I can come to. Michaleika was run, had a winery, was run by a family called Michalopoulos.
And I'd like for you to spell that, please.
Micha, Lopoulos, Michalopoulos. Elias Michalopoulos ran the winery. He was like the mayor of the little village. And so my uncle's contact said that go to that village. My uncle didn't know Mr. Michalopoulos. So the name changed later to Michaelos, but at that time, Michalopoulos. So 9 of us, it was my grandparents,
my father's parents,
my father's parents, my 3 uncles, my father's brothers, my mother, my sister, and I, on mule and on foot, started the trek to the mountains. And there were no roads that a car could go. I mean, even if we had a car or if somebody had a car, the roads were not built for cars. It was foot or mule. So we took some possessions with us. My parents did, and I was a year old, a little bit over a year old. I was born in July of the year before, so this was September of 1943. It was a 2-day trip to get to Michaleika. So when we got there, my mother tells a story where, my father knocked on Mr. Michalopoulos' door, and he said, "We're Jews and we're hiding from the Nazis, and we're asking for your help."
So your mother tells the story
of how my father knocked on Mr. Michalopoulos' door. We're Jews, and we are hiding from the Nazis, and would you help? So Mr. Michalopoulos looked at us, and he said, "Well, you look just like us. You're Greeks." "Yes, we're Greeks. We're your fellow Greeks, and that's all that I care about." He was a very patriotic man. He was 100% for Greece, and Greece was going through a turmoil at the time. There was a civil war going on at the same time. So he said, "Of course, I'm going to help you. You're fellow Greeks, and I will help you." So he had like a cottage, a crude house on his property, with 2 rooms, and he said, "You can live in that house." He would not accept any money, and that's where my family lived for a time.
So I'm going to go back just a little bit before they left. The Italians had the zone, and then the Germans came in. Do you know if they implemented any laws, whether it's Jewish stores or your store can only serve Jewish people? Did your family talk about that at all?
No, they did not. I think the only thing that they had started to do was for Jews to register. They had not started to aggressively go after the Jewish population. We left, just in the nick of time. No stars. Of course, my father closed his store when we left. He didn't go back. My uncles worked for the bank, the Greek National Bank. They left their jobs. They just left.
So what about, did your Uncle Marcus in Athens talk about anything that happened there that he communicated?
So we had not, and we didn't have communications when we were in the village. I know that they were hidden in plain view with false identification papers, and they didn't leave Athens. They stayed in Athens. So that's how they survived. But while we were in the village, there was no way to communicate with anybody. Nobody knew. My father didn't know what had happened to his sister. My mother had two sisters that were married in the island of Corfu. They didn't know. And there was a time that it was the high holidays. And my mother said to my father, I'm going back to Pátras. This was in the beginning, when we were first, right after we had gone to the village. She said, I'm going to go back to Pátras because it's the high holidays. And my father said to her, you want to go back to Pátras? You go, but the girls stay here with me. So, of course, my mother didn't go. So, even though things were really bad, I don't think that my mother had the comprehension of how bad they were. My father did.
So they didn't hear about the roundup of all the Jews being sent to Poland, and they learned that afterwards?
No, they learned that afterwards.
When they traveled to the village, 9 of you, do you know if they did it by night? Did they have to hide out? Were there Germans along the way? Do you know anything about that?
They did leave at night. They did travel at night. And I know it took 2 days for them to get there. So I am not sure that they were hiding during the day. It's there's a forest, there's the woods, They were not in a city where they would be seen. Mm-hmm. So I think they continued during the day also, but they did leave at night.
So do you know, before you get there, then we'll talk while you're there, about any provisions they took? Did they food or some clothing or things to cook with? Can you talk about any of that?
They took clothing. I don't think they took food. They might have taken, my mother might have taken some pots and pans to cook. But my mother always used to tell us about how my mother was a city girl. She didn't know how to do a lot of things like bake bread. And she had a lady that did the wash. There were no washing machines, obviously, anywhere at that time. But the wash lady would come once a week and scrub the clothes, Well, things were a lot different when they were in the village. She learned from the other village women to go downstream to the river and rub the clothes on the rocks. And she used to tell us how cold the water was. It was winter. She would tell us how she learned to bake bread out of whatever grain they had there. So the food supply there was not bad because they farmed. They had their own, food supply. They had chickens. They had eggs.
And who gave them those supplies? The
villagers.
The villagers?
Yeah.
Did the villagers know you were a Jewish family in hiding? Did they rally behind you? Or
I am pretty sure that they knew.
Mm-hmm.
I am pretty sure that they questioned Mr. Michalopoulos and who are these people. He might have said to them, oh, they're my cousins from Pátras and they're coming to stay with me. But I'm pretty sure that they knew who we were. I don't remember my mother ever talking about openly talking to the other villagers about who we were and why we were there. But they helped my mother learn all these things to take care of her family, where she knew nothing. She knew, she was a young woman from the city that was accustomed to city comforts and creature comforts that we did not have there.
Did the house, let's just call it the barn or the peasant house, whatever it was called, did it have running water? Did it have a bathroom? Where did they cook? Do you have any notion of that?
There was no running water. There was no bathroom. There was a hole on the ground outside, a little ways away from the house. The cooking was done on, a fire. And then what I was going to say about the food also is that the British dropped food by plane. Like food that doesn't spoil. Like I remember my mother saying how there's a powdered milk was one of the. So I was a baby. I was 1.5 years old. My mother was still nursing me because this way she knew that I would get nutrition. And when she tried to give me powdered, milk made from powder, that I would not take it. And she used to tell me how I used to go around to everybody in the family and I would say the Greek word for I'm hungry. Pinao, I'm hungry. So asking them to give me food. So food wasn't plentiful, but it was enough to keep us alive. And it wasn't tasty necessarily. And but the rations that they dropped was like powdered milk, powdered eggs. I think there was cheese. She used to tell us, and things like this.
And what about bathing or sometimes people who've stayed in bar to talk about infestation, lice, and all of that? Do you have any memory of that or knowledge?
I don't have memory of it, but I know that we were covered with lice. So at night we would pick the lice off of each other. I didn't. They shaved my head so that there would, the lice wouldn't have a place to live on my head. They didn't shave my sister's head. She was older. But that was our entertainment, our pastime. That's what we did.
Were there any other vermin that your family spoke about?
No, but we did get malaria. My mother had malaria. We all had malaria. And she was very, very thin. She was like skin and bones, but she was still nursing me.
How did the Mr. Michalopoulos help you in terms of aid, health, or anything of that nature when you all got sick?
So when we had malaria, we were no longer in that village, and I'll tell you that story too.
So before we move to the next one, did the Germans start coming, or anyone start coming to the village to inquire about people there? Like, how long were you there that you felt safe?
So a few months after we were there, they got word that the Nazis were approaching the village, but they were not looking for Jews. Mr. Michalopoulos had, as I said before, he was fiercely patriotic, and he had allowed a British intelligence unit to take a post in the mountains there in his village to monitor the Nazi movements. And the Nazis got word of that. So they came to look for the British intelligence unit. It had nothing to do with us. But they got word that the Nazis were coming. So we all left that village and we went to a neighboring village. The Nazis did come. They didn't find the British intelligence unit. They had also left. But because they knew that they were there, they took revenge at Mr. Michalopoulos, and they burned his house down to the ground. But it was just his house because he was in charge of the village. So when we all came back to the village, he discovered that his house was burned down. And where's he going to live now? This was going to be a perfect opportunity for him to say, sorry, but I have to live in the other house, and you have to go. But that's not what he did. So he moved into the peasant house. He occupied one room, and my family occupied the other room. And his family was made up of he and his wife and 3 children. So we were all together in this one building that was not very comfortable. The Nazis came again to that village later. And this time they found explosives. So they used the explosives to blow up the whole village, all the houses. So there was nothing left of the village. And at that point, everybody had to find another place to live. And we went to another village called the Nesticha, where the priest from the church found a place for us to live. And Mr. Michalopoulos went with some relatives somewhere else to another village, and all the other villagers scattered in other places.
So, a couple questions. How did you hear that the Nazis were coming for you to leave and avoid the bombing? Do you know that?
I think that British intelligence unit did their work, and I think that's how they found out, and they warned the villagers.
So now you're in this other village. There's 9 of you. Could you still stay together, or were you split up?
No, we stayed together. However, I don't think there were 9 of us anymore because my 2 uncles had been already killed.
And those uncles were?
Victor and Joseph Pepos, the oldest and the youngest.
So tell us about what happened to them. So whether it was Nazi-related or not Nazi-related, if you could share that story.
It was not Nazi-related. As I said earlier, during that German occupation, there was a civil war going on in Greece. The Communist Party of Greece was fighting the nationalists, the ones that were for the government and for the king. And there was an uprising. And a lot of them were in the mountains. They were the communists, correct. So one day they came into the village when we were still in Mihaleka, and they rounded up a bunch of young men from the village. Had nothing to do with being Jewish or not. I mean, my uncles obviously were Jewish, but that's not the reason they were rounded up. They picked young men that didn't have families, single, and they rounded them up to hold them hostage for ransom. They wanted to raise money for their cause, and they felt that the families would pay money. So they were holding them for a few days when they got word that the Nazis were coming into the village. They didn't know what to do with all these hostages that they had. And for them, the simplest thing to do was to kill them all instead of allowing them to go free and to go back to their families. They shot them all. So my uncles never came back. My grandmother always lived with a hope that one day they were going to knock on the door, and here they were. But my father knew they had been killed, and their bodies were never recovered. And I don't know where their bodies ended up.
So we talked about your grandparents now. Sadly, there's 7 of you, and you're 1 to 2, but your grandparents are elderly. How did they survive? How was it hard for them at their age?
It was very hard. It was extremely hard. My grandmother died when she was 72, and she looked like she was 100. You know, it was very hard. My grandfather, who was a very strong person and a brave kind of person in his life, just lost his mind. You know, when we came back to Pátras when the war was over, my grandfather was not my grandfather that I had read so much about, and I mean, newspaper articles that were written about him from before the war, and so I never knew my grandfather as a well man.
So, before we go to the second location where you lived, when you were in the peasant house, did you sleep on straw? I mean, what was it? What was that like? Sleeping arrangements, and did they have to barter to help get food? I know they grew some. Do you know any of that?
Yeah, we did sleep on straw, and so my uncles and my father and my mother helped with the chores of the village, of whatever needed to be done. And in return, they got food. You know, money was not, even if you had money, it wasn't worth anything. You know, if you had something to give, was worth a lot more than money.
Did you have any special, like today would be a blanket or a toy or something you held on to that you remember from at least that time, or anything, or your sister did?
We didn't have that luxury of a toy or a blanket even. And no, I guess my security blanket was my mother. Yeah.
And just to help me and the viewers, what was the weather like for Greece at this period? So was it, you know, it's that part of the world?
Winters were very harsh in the mountains, very cold, rainy mostly. And winter is the rainy season in Greece, or it used to be before climate change. I don't know now. But and damp, and very cold. We would get like blisters from the cold, and it was hard. It was hard.
So you're walking around saying, "I'm hungry" in Greece, which is
in Greek. Yeah.
Could you say the expression again?
Pinao, I'm hungry.
Right.
Yeah.
And what about feeling cold and all of that?
I have no recollection, and I don't remember saying that word either. But my mother told me I said.
Right. So now, the first bombing or destruction, you and your host family are living in the same space, and then you have to now move to this other village. And so now there's 5 of you, no, 7 of you instead of 9.
Yeah.
What was that like? And did you have to be in hiding because it's different people that didn't know you or protected? Do you know that?
I'm not quite sure. I know that my sister went to school in the church with the other children because she was already 7, close to 8. So she was going to school with them. And I guess we stayed there for maybe 5 months or so. It was the latter part of a year or so in hiding. But I don't remember anybody really talking too much about that second village. I know that it was the church that put us up, that my sister went to school there with the church, but it was also the place that we all got sick, and there was no medicine.
Is that what you got?
Malaria. There was, and there was no medication. I don't even think there was a doctor. But we recovered somehow.
So you're in both villages. You mentioned already a Jewish holiday, so it was Rosh Hashanah and Passover. What did your parents do or tell you about any holiday besides that she knew she wanted to go back to?
The word was survival. It wasn't about celebrating holidays. That was probably the only time in my parents' life that they didn't eat matzah. They probably didn't eat bread either, on Passover. But when you're trying to survive, you put everything else aside. You do what you have to do to survive.
Yeah. Before your parents and your whole family went into hiding, was there a sense of being kosher in Greece? Were they kosher or just,
So where I lived, in Pátras, there was no shochet, the ritual slaughtering of animals. So we didn't eat pork. We didn't eat, shellfish was not in style anyway, but we didn't eat any of that. So for the holidays, this is after the war. This is stuff that I remember. A shochet would come from Athens to Pátras before Rosh Hashanah, and he would slaughter the chickens before Passover. He would slaughter a lamb, and the whole community got meat from that. But we ate a lot of fish because we were by the water, and that was, 3 times a week we had fish. We didn't eat so much meat. So, no, we didn't keep kosher in the exact sense of the word, but we knew what we were not supposed to eat.
So you're in survival mode, you're in these villages, you get sick in the second place. At what point did your family hear it was safe to leave? How did they know to leave and go back? Do you know?
I guess they got word that the Nazis withdrew from Greece. That was 1944, that the end of 1944, that they left Greece. And I guess they got word in the village that the Nazis, things like this, even though the village is remote, they find out. They may not have found out the same day or the next day, but they found out, and we were able to return.
And so you returned back to Pátras.
Right.
So where did you return? Did the family still have a home? Can you tell us about that?
So my grandparents' house was being used for quarters for the Nazis, and that ransacked the house. I don't know. We never went back to my parents' home. we went to my grandparents' house. We moved in with them.
Could you not go back to your house? Was it damaged, or was there...
I don't think so. The house was not, I don't think it was damaged. I don't think that house was a smaller house. I don't think that they used that for anything. But we went to my grandparents' house to live with them because of the shock of them having lost their 2 sons. And the other son was getting ready. He was leaving for Palestine.
That was Bertrand.
That's so. And so they were going to be left by themselves in this huge house. And so we moved in with them. So I have no recollection of my parents' home, even though I lived there for 1 year, my first year of my life. It was my grandparents' home, was my home.
So here they've been in the mountains, they're thin, they've been sick. They come into town. What did the neighbors, did anyone recognize them? Did they help them? What was that first shift into town? They were all gone and they were all back. Well, almost all back. Did mother or father talk about that moment?
Yes. The neighbors were elated.
Did they recognize
most of us? Eventually, they did. And yes, and little by little, we all recovered from the illnesses that malaria was the one thing that my mother talked about. I don't know what else. I mean, I'm sure there were other, like a cold or flu or stuff like that. But yes, everybody was a lot thinner than they left and traumatized. And but the neighbors were a big help. Not only did they help with bringing things back to my mother, but also cleaning up the house together, and making it livable for my family to live in.
So what about food and all sorts of things? That they help you at the beginning with that?
I don't know. I don't know about that. I don't know if they brought the casseroles. I don't know.
And then, at what moment did you family realize that not all of you had made it back? Your 300 community. How many survived?
Very soon thereafter. A lot of them had perished. They did not have connections to, and they stayed in town, and they did what they were told to do, register, and I don't know what else they had to do, and they were deported. So after the war, there were maybe about 100 Jews left in the town, and some of them did go to other places, other cities, like Athens, eventually. People went to South America, people went to Israel, people went to the United States, eventually. But initially, it was the shock of seeing a small Jewish community become even smaller.
Tell me about the synagogue. Did it survive at all, or was it damaged?
It was damaged, the facade and the outside. They didn't take anything from inside of the synagogue because it was still there when I, as a child, that would attend services there. So I don't know if anybody was put things somewhere safely. I don't know, but it was still there inside. It survived for many years until there was no more, not enough Jews to even have any services there, and then it was, it was no longer in service.
Do you know if there was any don't want to say celebration or parade or recognition that the war was over, that your family recalled to you? I know you were young, but
No. I think Greece was in such bad shape from after the war and the civil war that had the country divided, that I don't think that they were in any kind of mood for celebrating. Nowadays, there is a celebration in Greece, and I mean, it was when I was there too. October 28th is a national holiday, and that is the day in I think it was 1939 or 40, maybe, I don't know the year. I have to look it up. Mussolini marched into Greece and just demanded that handed over Greece, and the prime minister said, no, ochi is the Greek word for no, and it's Ochi Day in Greece, October 28th, and we have parades for that. But there's no commemoration of the end of the war. It was, the Greek bravery to stand up to a bigger country like Italy and say no, and they gave them a run for their money, the Greeks. The Italians were not good for, when it came to fighting.
So your family comes back, they're dealing with getting their lives together. Just tell me a little bit now, the communists and the Civil War, how did that impact them again, coming back to Pátras? Did it impact the family at all?
No. The communists were pretty much, they're still there, but I think there's still a communist party in Greece, but they're not fighting with each other, physical fighting. So it's funny that you asked that, because one of the things, when we were vetted before coming to the United States, one of the things that the United States government was very interested in was, were we communists? Were we sympathizers with the Communist Party? And did we ever belong to the Communist Party? These are questions that they asked our neighbors and friends and everybody. This was part of the background check that the United States government did before they would allow us to come to the United States. And I remember that vividly, because friends of my father came to him to tell him, these are the things that they asked about you.
So interesting. So in terms of that, your family that survived were your grandparents, your parents, your sister and you, and then your uncle
Pátras, yes.
So he went to Israel. What motivated him to go there? Second question, do you know?
So there was a wave of young men and some young women, too, from Greece, going to Palestine. This was 46, 47, even 45. I think my uncle left in either 45 or 46. And they would they get smuggled on boats, and they would just leave them on the beach, in the middle of the night. What motivated him was that we were all very Zionistic, my husband used to sing all these Zionist songs that he had learned as a child in Greece. And I, not so much. I was a little younger, but it was instilled in us that, we're Jews and this is our future and it's going to be our homeland. And that's what motivated him to go. He was young. He was not attached to a wife and children, and he decided that that's what he was going to do. I'm going to go back to the Michaelos family. Right. It's Michalopoulos, and I keep saying Michaelos because they ended up leaving Greece. After the war was over, they had lost everything in their village. They also came to Pátras. My father met them in Pátras, and he tried to give them money for what they had done for us, and he absolutely, again, refused to take any money. And then they kind of lost touch with each other, and we didn't know, but they emigrated to the United States, and they were living in Baltimore. And this was 5 years before us. You know, my father had no communication, but my cousin, my mother's niece, who lived in Baltimore, was going to night school, and she met another Greek woman who turned out to be Mrs. Michaelos. They changed their name from Michalopoulos to Michaelos, not Michaels, Michaelos. They chopped off the ending when they came to the United States. It was just too long of a name. So the two women started talking with each other, and they, where are you from? The woman says the village. So my cousin says, where's that near? Oh, it's near the town called Pátras. Oh, I have an aunt who lives in Pátras. Oh, who's your aunt? And then she writes my mother a letter. I met the woman that hid you during the war, but that was like 5 years before we ever came to Baltimore. So we didn't really keep in touch with them. We knew they lived in Baltimore. So when we came to Baltimore, my father went to the Greek grocery store, and he left a note. He figured they're Greek, they're going to go to the Greek grocery store. And he asked the Greek grocer, when this man comes, would you give him this note? And that's how we made contact with them. He found the note in the Greek grocery store, and it was like almost immediate. We came October 12th in New York, so it's October 15th that we're in Baltimore, and we're having Thanksgiving dinner with them in November. And they did not live close to us. They didn't live in the Jewish part of Baltimore. They lived in the Greek part of, and they would come from the house where they lived. He would come, Mr. Michaelos, pick us up. We were in the hotel. He would pick us up, take us to his house for dinner, and bring us back, all six of us. How we fit in the car, I don't know. But in those days, we didn't have seat belts or bucket seats or anything like that.
So, well, two thoughts. What was it like to be with a family that spoke Greek from your hometown, and to be with the family that saved you now that you're an older adult?
It was amazing. It was just amazing. They were like the long-lost relatives. There was like, and their son was as cute as anything. He was like a little older than me, and but he was Greek, you know. It was like I could admire him, but I couldn't get interested in him. But it's very interesting because we had like these two separate lives, kind of. We connected with Greek Jews in Baltimore. There were about 5-6 families of Greek Jews, and we did all the Jewish things with them. But then we also did a lot of things with the Michaelos family, and then times came when we were all together. My sister got married the year after we came to the United States. They were at the wedding. Their daughter got married a little before that. We were at the wedding. They had grandchildren christened. My parents had grandchildren bar mitzvah, bat mitzvah. So they were part of our celebrations. We were part of their celebrations. And it was like, they were like a lifeline to us when we came to Baltimore. I remember watching TV in their house. We didn't have a TV. I saw Elvis Presley in the Ed Sullivan Show. I was at their house. We had dinner with them. Mm-hmm. So it was just, and I didn't appreciate so much at the time what they had done for us, the importance of what they had done.
So, two things. Did Thanksgiving mean anything at that time? Because it's American holiday.
We just knew it was an American holiday. You try to become, you come to this country, you try to become an American. And we embraced, it was a nice holiday.
So I'm going to ask a question about Greece and then America. So you reunite, and in living in Greece, you shared with, at one time, maybe not on camera, about celebrating Greek holidays like Lent and all of that. What did you do in Greece, and did you keep that up with the Mykolos family in America? Could you talk about those two things?
So because we were part of the Greek community in Pátras, and we had Greek friends, and we adopted some of the things that Greeks would do, that maybe they were tied to religious background or basis or a holiday, but it wasn't a religious ritual where you would have to go to church to observe. We didn't go to church. We would go to church if somebody got married or if somebody, there was a christening of a child, but not to observe a holiday, a Greek Orthodox holiday. So there is an observance of the beginning of Lent in Greece, the end of Mardi Gras, beginning of Lent. That first Monday that Lent begins, it's customary for all the Greek people to go out into the countryside and have a picnic, even though it may be bitter cold, because sometimes I think most of the time is in February, unless Easter is really late. But that's what the Greeks do, and they start eating Lenten foods that I'm not so familiar about all the foods that are Lenten, but I know they don't eat meat. So we did the same thing, and we did it with our Jewish friends. We went and kind of celebrated the beginning of Lent, or I don't know if celebrate is the correct word, commemorated. So observed. So
when you come to America and you reunite with the Mykolos family, did you continue some of those Greek traditions with them as this new found family?
So, first of all, I don't ever remember observing the beginning of Lent in the United States. I don't know if that went by the wayside with the Greeks, if they ever did it, because it falls on a Monday. People don't have off on Monday here in the United States to go out to have a picnic. In Greece, they have off. It's like a holiday, a religious holiday. And the things that I remember observing with them and going to their church was not for religious reasons. It was for their weddings, for their christenings. They don't have anything equivalent to bar bat mitzvah, and they came to synagogue for those things for us, with us, and God forbid funerals. We would go to the service in the church because that's always done in the church.
So I'm going to follow the the Mykonos reunion with you. So you have a reunion, you become one large family. Tell us about how you connected with their family in terms of honoring them, and then we'll talk about the grandson afterwards. I don't know what order it was.
So when the Holocaust Memorial was erected in Baltimore, it was 1984, and they were dedicating the memorial to the righteous Gentiles. And I don't know how somebody discovered, I don't know if it was my sister Rachel that had connections with the committee that was doing this, but somebody discovered that there's a Greek Jewish family in Baltimore, and the people that hid them in Greece during the Nazi occupation are also in Baltimore. And wouldn't it be nice if we have the two families honored in this dedication of the Holocaust Memorial? And that's what happened. And there was a big article written in the newspaper after that with the story. The senator from Maryland put it in the congressional record, and so that's memorialized that way. Then when Yad Vashem, I don't remember when Yad Vashem was erected, but so when they were doing the Avenue of the Righteous Gentiles, the Avenue of the Righteous, I think it's called, and we submitted the Michaelis family, and there's a plaque there and a tree. And when the first time that my husband and I were in Israel, and we went to Yad Vashem, we found it, and I took pictures of it, and I showed it when I went back to Baltimore. I showed them the picture. I don't think they have ever been to Israel to see it, but they deserve it.
So they saved you and your family. They didn't take any money. Well, down the years, you hear something for a family member. Can you tell us a story about their grandson?
So the grandson, one of their daughter's sons, was in the they went into the restaurant business. The whole family went into the restaurant business in Baltimore. So now the grandparents have died. This
grandparents are the ones that saved your family.
Correct. So the grandson is in the restaurant business, not the family restaurant. He opened up his own restaurant, and he was doing very well until COVID hit, and he happened to be in a location that catered to, it was by the courthouse in Towson, Maryland. And it catered to the court personnel, the lawyers' offices, and they all shut down during COVID. So he was not able, like some restaurants, to go to pivot and to go into the carry-out, because it wasn't a neighborhood where people would go to pick up. It wasn't residential. So he went out of business. So after COVID was over, he went to buy another restaurant and start all over again. But he didn't have enough capital to finance, and so it started out with a GoFundMe page that we found out about. And now there's so many of us, because of the grandparents, that we all felt obliged to pitch in and help him. This was our way of saying thank you, because none of us would be alive. So Well, he was able to open that restaurant because he was able to raise the funds. Other people also contributed. But my point is that it's like 35 of us or 40, I haven't even counted how many of us are alive today and able to do this because of what his grandparents did.
Okay. So you're in America. How did you learn English? What was it like to go to school here? What is this a picture of?
This is a picture of my father and my mother, taken in 1933 when they became engaged. And you can see they're wearing rings. My father is wearing a wedding ring. And it's customary to, when you get engaged in Greece, it was customary to wear the ring.
What is this a picture of?
This is, again, my parents while they were engaged on an outing in a little forest close to our house. And as you can see, they're both very fashionable and really happy and in love.
Tell us about this picture.
So this picture is a group of all women with my grandmother, my mother's mother, who is this lady here, and my mother is next to her, my mother's sisters, my mother's first cousins, and it's all the girls in the family at the time.
Which was what year?
And this was about 1929. I think my mother was 16 at the time.
Tell us about this picture.
So this is a picture that was taken in 1933, and it is my mother with her first cousins. They were her best friends. And starting from left is her cousin Finetta, her cousin Serafina, my mother Emily, and her cousin Esther.
And what city?
And this was taken in Pátras. They all lived in Pátras.
Tell us about this family portrait.
This is the Villeli family, my father's side of the family, my grandparents, my father's parents, Marcos and Josephine Villeli, my uncles, my aunt, and my father. And my Uncle Victor was the oldest. My grandparents had 5 children. My Uncle Victor was the oldest. And then was my father Emmanuel, his sister Lina, his brother Bertos, and his youngest brother Joseph Pepos Villeli. And that was in 1934.
Tell us about this picture of the 3 children.
So this picture was taken in 1946. We came back from hiding in 1944, and my brother was born in 1946. So in this picture is my oldest sister, Josephine, who's about 10 years old, my brother, who is about 6 months old, and I am holding on to my brother, and I'm 4 years old in that picture.
And this picture of you, where is that taken?
So that picture of me is taken in the yard of our home. We had like a courtyard and a garden with lemon trees and orange trees, and there were steps going into the garden. I'm standing on the step. We had rose bushes, and I am holding on to a rose, smelling the beautiful smell of the rose, and I was 6 years old then.
And who made your clothing? Did you make, what parents make it, or you bought it?
We used to have a dressmaker that came to our house every change of season, and we each got a new dress for the change of season. And I remember that dress was a woolen dress, and it was very rough wool, but we needed it for the winter, so it was kind of itchy.
What is this picture?
So this was my father's store. He had a little store where he sold yard goods, fabrics. In those days, we didn't have ready-made dresses to buy. We would buy fabric and have a dressmaker come to the house to make our clothes. So this picture is taken in front of his store, and my brother is on the left, my father, my mother, and I am next to my mother, my cousin, who has the same name as me, who lives in Athens. She still lives in Athens. And my younger sister, Rachel, is in front of us. And this was taken in 1954, 2 years before we left for the United States.
Tell us about this picture.
This was the picture that was taken in Greece before we left to go into our passport. My older sister is not in the picture because she was over 18 and she had her own passport, but the rest of us were on one passport. And there's my brother Victor, my father Emmanuel, and I'm standing behind him, and my mother Emily and my sister Rachel.
And what year was this?
It was 1956.
Tell us about this picture.
This is a photograph of the exterior of the synagogue of Pátras. It no longer exists. It was torn down. There were no more Jews left in Pátras. But this is where we went to services on Saturdays and holidays.
Tell us about this family.
This is Michaelos family, or Michalopoulos in Greek. They were the ones that hid us in their village during the Nazi occupation. And they hid our whole family, 9 of us. And we reunited with them in Baltimore. They had emigrated to Baltimore 5 years before us. And this is shortly after we had come to Baltimore that they took us out on an outing to show us Baltimore. So there, some of my family is in the picture and some of the Michaelos family. Mr. Michaelos is the one standing on the far right. His daughter's holding one of our friend's babies. She's on the far left. And my parents are in the middle. And next to my mother is Catherine Michaelos, Mrs. Michaelos. Her son is kind of squatting in the front. My brother is in front of my mother making a face. And, and it was a happy reunification and a real surprise to find them in Baltimore.
Tell us about this picture.
This is my very handsome father. He was about 17 years old, and he was drafted. He went into the Navy and served the Greek Navy. And I guess about 1929. I don't know how many years he served.
Okay, tell us about you and your brother here.
So my brother and I are standing in the back balcony of our home in Pátras, and I guess it was 1951, and my brother was maybe 5 years old, 6 years old at the time, and I was about 10.
Everyone. It's about this picture.
This picture was taken in front of our house in Pátras. We had a really huge front door, very, very tall. And a cousin had come to visit from Athens, and the cousin and her son are standing in the back row. And I am on the far right in front of my sister Josephine, and my father is next to her, my mother is next to him, and my brother and younger sister Rachel are in the front. And this was taken in 1952.
And the house is made of what?
The house was made of stone, bricks, the stone, really massive.
Tell us about these gathering pictures.
Okay, these two pictures were taken outdoors, and I remember the day. It was very cold, and it was cloudy, and it was in February, and it was the beginning of Lent season for the Greek Orthodox, where it is tradition for them to go out into the countryside and start eating Lenten food. Even though we were not Greek Orthodox, this is a gathering of some of the Greek Jews from Pátras doing the same thing, following the customs of our neighbors. So it's my family and other Greek Jews from the city. So this is my first snow experience in the United States. I had never seen snow before. Where I came from, it got cold in the winter, but rainy, never snowy. So it was just beautiful. And I'm wearing a coat that my father had made for me before we left Greece and I remember it was green and very warm, because he said to us, Baltimore is going to be cold. From what he had read, he had researched it, and we're going to need warm clothes. So here I am wearing the coat that my father had made for me, had bought the fabric, and we had a dressmaker make.
Tell us about this wedding picture.
This was my sister Rachel's wedding in 1971, and it is a picture of my father with all his girls, my mother, Rachel, Josephine, and me, and I just love that picture.
Go ahead.
This is a family picture at my grandson's Simon's bar mitzvah, and this was November of 2011. My sister Josephine, my sister Rachel, my mother, who's 98 in that picture, and me, and my brother, Victor, is standing behind my mother.
Tell us about this day.
This was July 4th, 1965, my wedding day. And this ceremony is over, and we're a happy couple walking toward a new life.
What was your husband's name?
Simon Francis.
So starting at the top, who is that woman?
So this is Mrs. Catherine Michaelos. She's the wife of Elias Michaelos, who was the patriarch of the family who hid us during the Nazi occupation of Greece. The Baltimore Sun, the newspaper, wrote an article at the time. This was April of 1984, and the Holocaust Memorial in Baltimore was dedicated, and it was they were honoring the righteous Gentiles. So since the Michaelos family and my family both were in Baltimore, they were invited to go to the dedication. The article describes how this family saved us, and Mrs. Michaelos' picture on the bottom is where she received a certificate for her for what she had done, and also the story was made part of the congressional record by the senator from Maryland at the time.
And was she also recognized in Yad Hashem?
She was also, yes, both her husband and herself were recognized in Yad Vashem in the Avenue of the Righteous Gentiles. There's a plaque with their name and our name. That is the family that they saved, and the tree was planted.
Tell us about this picture.
So this is a picture of my husband and me on vacation. We were on a cruise, and he loved traveling. So he was very happy.
Tell us about this study book.
This is Ethics of Our Fathers, and in Greek it's called Apothemata των Πατέρων. And it is in Hebrew and translated into Greek.
And how did your father use this?
To read from. It's not part of any service, but it is to read from.
Tell us about this Haggadah.
So this is Pesach Haggadah, and it is in Greek, in Hebrew, and some of it is also in Ladino. So you have Haggadah Pesach in Hebrew, you have Haggadah tu Pascha in Greek, and Haggadah de Pascua in Ladino.
And did you use this in Greece and America?
We used it in Greece, and I'm sure my father used it in the United States too.
So this is a page of...
This is Greek translation, and the Hebrew, and the Greek translation. And this is in Ladino.
Tell us how you came by this book and what is it?
This is a Haggadah that was given to my husband from his father, and that their family was also in hiding during the war. And this is the Haggadah that my father-in-law used to use to conduct the service at the Passover Seder. It's in Ladino, written in Hebrew characters, but in Ladino.
And that